My uncle started acting inappropriately towards my younger sister, and his escalating behavior prompted me to finally confront my parents. I have noticed that my uncle, 49-year-old male, has been paying a lot of attention to my younger sister, 14-year-old female, and he acts very differently in front of her. I knew he had always had a soft spot for her, but he was there when she was born and was the first to hold her. His attention has escalated to the point where I don't think it should be happening. At first it didn't seem like a big deal, and sure, he's given her more gifts than me, but it was always there. He's always doted on her. But now it's like I'm seeing it for the first time, and suddenly I realize that he's become overly affectionate. Whether we're at his house for a family gathering or something, he can't stop complimenting how pretty she is and how she's growing up so fast. Not only that, but he would pat her on the back and rub her shoulders when she was standing nearby, as if it was no big deal. Sometimes he would grab her waist without warning. The worst part is that the gifts he gives her are more expensive than the gifts he gives me or the rest of the family. At first, I told myself I was just overreacting, but then I realized that it wasn't a one-time thing, but had been going on for a while, and it wasn't until a week ago that I really started noticing. Since then, we haven't been to his house, and to be honest, I don't know what to do. I don't want to ignore it, but I'm afraid that things will get worse or that I'm just imagining things. I tried talking to my grandmother about it, hoping she could help, but when I brought it up, she just brushed me off like I wasn't there. I feel like she doesn't take me seriously at all. My parents are always busy with work and don't have time for me, so I haven't had a chance to sit down with them and talk about it. To be honest, I'm even afraid to tell them, for fear that they won't believe me or that I'm overreacting. I really want to talk to someone, but telling our large family would be too much. What if I'm exaggerating a minor problem? I don't want to be the one to cause a drama, and if there's nothing to worry about, I still can't let it go. I've decided to talk to my parents as soon as possible. You've always told me that I need to tell someone that I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill, and I finally feel that I'm not going crazy because I feel uncomfortable. This made me realize that I couldn't just sit back and let things go on like this. Update. I spoke to my sister as soon as I got back from my grandmother's house. When I got home, I immediately had a chat with my sister, and she realized that it was strange, but she actually liked it at first. She said that our uncle was nicer to her than our parents, and that the gifts were nice too. She said that she only felt uncomfortable when he started touching her. I mentioned the specific behavior in my previous post, but since she kept accepting all the gifts he gave her, she didn't think it was appropriate to say anything. When I asked her why it started, she revealed that he started touching her like that when she was 12 years old. She said he only did it when they were in her room because we visited often and our aunt and uncle had a guest room for us siblings, which is why she didn't lock the door. She also specifically said she was afraid to tell anyone about how she was creeped out by his actions because our grandmother and aunt dismissed it when she was 12, saying she was his favorite, and she might just be misinterpreting what he did because she's a teenager now. I showed her your comment, and she had never heard the word grooming before, so she was shocked and a little angry, saying that our uncle would never do such a thing. But I convinced her to tell our parents so that they could stop our uncle from touching her together. I also texted my parents, describing in detail how my sister feels uncomfortable with our uncle's behavior, but my parents have not yet replied to my message about our uncle. I just texted that I will talk about it when I get home, as they both have to work overtime today and may not be home tonight. My sister said she had already talked to my aunt about it, but my aunt just brushed it off like my grandmother did. I'm not sure if I should mention it again because of the video recording. I don't want my sister to be touched on purpose again in exchange for what we want, but I can't say anything without evidence either. I'm still thinking about it, but thanks for your advice. Sorry if the moderator doesn't allow this, but I'm really confused and angry right now and don't know how to solve it. Our parents came home an hour ago, and my sister and I talked to them. In short, my mom was angry and my dad was surprised, but he also revealed something. It turns out that he knew that our uncle, who is his brother, had always been weird with my sister but didn't do anything about it because he thought that the child did whatever he wanted. He said that our uncle had had sex with one of my cousins a few years before my sister was born. It turned out that he knew that our uncle, who is his brother, had always been strange with my sister, but had not done anything about it because he thought that children did whatever they wanted. Our uncle had changed, he said. Our uncle had had sex with one of my cousins a few years before my sister was born, and our grandmother was the one who caught him and made him get treatment. Our father said that our grandmother made our uncle promise not to do it again so that they wouldn't report him. Our aunt, the wife of this particular uncle, knew about it too, but according to our father, she said that our cousin had dressed in a way that made it obvious. Our father says that's why that particular cousin doesn't talk to the family. My mother obviously didn't know about it, and they argued about it. If our father didn't tell our uncle to back off and report him to the police, she threatened to divorce him and issue a restraining order against his entire family. Our father didn't want to do that. As far as I know, he was calling our grandmother. I'm sorry, it's a complete mess. I don't know what else to do. I'm being crushed. My sister seems okay for now, so that's important for me at the moment. I feel like my life is falling apart because of our uncle, and at this moment, I'm starting to feel like the only way to fix everything is to punch him in the face. I know that's not rational, but I'm so angry. I also mentioned calling the police or going to the school counselor, as you suggested, but she didn't want to. She said she was embarrassed about it, and that they just scolded her for letting it go for 2 years, even though I told her she hadn't done anything wrong. I'm afraid she won't budge. Update 3. In short, my mom and dad are getting divorced, and my mom has temporarily taken my siblings, including my sister, and I back to her parents' house until the divorce is final. My parents are old, but very interesting, so my sister and the other siblings like to stay here, even though everything is very chaotic right now, but nothing major has happened yet. I want you to know that my mom has already signed my sister up for therapy. I told my mom that my sister doesn't want to call the police or do anything else, and my mom is planning to call the police herself. My mom is also trying to apply for a training order, but it will take a while, so she's applying for a temporary permit until she can submit a permanent permit. Our mom and dad both work full-time, but now my mom is alone with 5 children and also has to work. She is very stressed and tired. Her parents help too, but as I said, they're getting older and really can't do much themselves. There is no news from our cousin at the moment because our mom is so busy. Sorry, this is not a very good update. I don't know what is going on with our dad and his family, but our mom tells us not to worry and that she will handle it. Thanks again to everyone for taking the time to read my posts and give me advice. I think I would feel very helpless without it, so thank you. Now just some updates on life. Nothing major. I'm not quite sure what to write at the moment as Mom is trying to deal with everything on her own, but we will amend this post if anything new comes up. Update 4. Things have become complicated since my last post. Understandably, Mom is reaching her limit juggling her new life, the children, and work. She has been working with a lawyer to get a restraining order, which, as you can imagine, is taking time, but some significant progress has been made on the legal front, and the police have become involved. I know many of you have been asking about the police and whether my sister is cooperating. The good news is that after some serious talking, my sister has finally agreed to tell the authorities. It hasn't been easy, and she is still embarrassed and scared about what is going to happen, but she now understands that it is not her fault. A detective came last week to take a statement, and let me tell you, it was like a roller coaster ride. My sister has been very quiet about it, but she is actually much more open than I thought. She was very nervous, but I was there for her the whole time, and I made sure the detective was gentle and understanding. Family dynamics. Things have become even more complicated. Mercier, my father has been virtually non-existent throughout this whole process. He is still talking to my uncle, who, by the way, doesn't know we've gone to the police and is still trying to protect him. Honestly, I don't know what's wrong with him. I thought he'd have more backbone, but he's acting as if none of this has happened. I haven't spoken to him for a while now. I'm focusing on taking care of my mom and sister. Mom had to get a lawyer to apply for a permanent injunction, but Dad isn't helping her at all. The worst thing is that he's still in contact with his brother, and he's doing his best to play down everything. I think he is more afraid of losing his brother than actually facing the truth about what he did and what happened to the family. I have tried to keep in touch with my cousins and my aunt, but things have become tense. Our aunt, my uncle's wife, has been avoiding us for a while now. She doesn't return phone calls, and the few times I've tried to text her, she has only given me short replies. I think she is beginning to realize what has happened, but at the same time, she is trying to protect her husband. I haven't spoken to my grandmother for a while either, but my mother's lawyer is investigating what she knows. To be honest, I'm not surprised if she keeps denying the past with my cousin. I think it's probably just a continuation of the therapy. I'm happy to say that my sister has been receiving therapy, which has been very helpful for her. Although it's not immediate, she is still dealing with a lot of guilt and fear from the past few years, but she is gradually opening up. I think she is beginning to realize that none of this is her fault. She still doesn't want to go to school counseling, and to be honest, I'm not sure she's ready for it, but for now, the therapy is really helping, and we're taking it one step at a time. My uncle's situation is serious. He still has no idea. No one's told him about it. But the worst thing is that he's been trying to cover his tracks. I've heard from some relatives that he's been acting really strange at family gatherings. He's been acting distant, compensating with gifts for the other kids, making excuses to avoid being in a room with my sister. I believe he knows something is wrong, but he doesn't seem to know that we are one step ahead. We have also discovered that he has tried to contact my sister through other family members, sending her gifts and messages. My mother has told everyone not to forward his things to her. This man has no boundaries, and I've had enough. He tries to make everything seem like normal. What's next? Right now, we are in the waiting period, and my mother is applying for a restraining order while we wait for the hearing. We're keeping a low profile, and the last thing we want is for him to show up on our doorstep. I admit I'm still angry, and I want to confront him in person, but I know it's not the right time. I have to trust the legal process for now, and although it's the hardest thing I've ever done, I honestly feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel. The second story moved into the haunted Victorian house where my brother and I live, but now the relentless spirit haunts us. They refuse to let go. It all started a few months ago when I moved into an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town. I had heard stories about the house being haunted, but its size and charm appealed to me. The house was big enough for my brother Max and me to live comfortably, and it was affordable. It certainly needed a bit of renovation, but I thought it was an easy project. We've been living there for a few weeks by now, and at first we noticed some strange things. The house was very small, the lights flickered sometimes, and chairs might wobble as if someone had just sat on them. But nothing too worrying. Max was always skeptical, thinking it was just the quirks of an old house, but I wasn't so sure. I've always been sensitive to energy, some people call it intuition, but I just know when something is not right. One night, after I finished cleaning up dinner in the kitchen, I heard footsteps upstairs. I froze. Max was downstairs with me, playing with his phone. I told him to be quiet for a moment, and then listened again. The footsteps were louder, slow, and deliberate. It wasn't the house shaking, and it wasn't the wind. It was the sound of human footsteps. I walked upstairs, my heart racing, thinking he was messing around upstairs, but no. The hallway was empty, and the footsteps had stopped. Max was still on the sofa, completely unaware. I shrugged and thought to myself that maybe I had heard it wrong. But over the next few days, the sound became clearer and clearer at night. I heard soft whispers, like a conversation taking place in the unreachable. Then, for the first time, I noticed in the hallway mirror that the reflection in the mirror was not quite right. Sometimes I would see a moving shadow in the corner of my eye, or I would think I saw someone standing behind me in the mirror, but when I turned around, there was no one there. I told Max about this, but he just laughed at me and said it was my imagination. But then it happened again. One night, after he had gone out with his friends, I was sitting in the living room when I heard a loud noise from upstairs. The door slammed shut, making a loud noise as it hit the wall. I decided that this could not go on any longer, so I grabbed a flashlight and prepared to investigate. When I reached the room at the end of the corridor, a heavy feeling filled the air. The temperature had dropped significantly, and I could see my breath in the cold. The door to the room was like a can, and I slowly pushed it open, my heart racing. That's when I saw a figure standing at the end of the room, its back to me, tall and thin, wearing an old-fashioned suit. I couldn't see its face, just the outline. I was so scared that my mind went blank, and I stumbled backwards, hitting the dresser. The figure turned sharply, and for a moment I thought I saw its face, pale and haggard, with empty eyes. But it appeared so quickly, and disappeared just as quickly, disappearing into the wall as if it had never been there. I ran downstairs, locked all the doors, and tried to calm myself. When Max came home, I told him everything. He didn't believe me at first, but after hearing strange noises for a few nights, he began to change his mind. We contacted a local historian in the hope of finding some answers. The story she told us sent shivers down my spine. The house once belonged to a wealthy family, but tragedy struck when their young son died under mysterious circumstances. Rumor has it that his spirit never left. Over the years, people have even seen him in his home, even after his family sold it. Many say the house is cursed. I don't know what to think. Was it really a ghost? Or was it just my imagination? Max was skeptical, but my gut told me it was real, and there was more than one ghost. There was something darker in that house that didn't want to leave. That night, I had a dream or a vision of standing in that room. I saw the figure again, but this time it was different. It was closer to me. I heard it whisper in my ear. Suddenly, it lunged at me, its cold fingers wrapping around my neck. I woke up gasping for breath, covered in sweat, and still feeling the pressure on my chest. I knew we had to leave, but after everything that had happened, I couldn't just abandon the house. I needed answers, to know if there was any way to end what was haunting us. Max and I did everything we could, turning to mediums, shamans, and even the local priest for help, but nothing worked. The house didn't want us there, and the more we resisted, the more aggressive the ghost became. Eventually, we decided to pack up and leave, but the house would never let us go. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see the figure and hear the whispers. That's when I knew that the ghosts weren't just in the house. They were in my head too, always with me, waiting for their next chance to strike. Update. It's been a few months since I posted the first part of my story, and things have escalated. I thought the worst was over once we left the house, but I was wrong. Both Max and I try to move on with our lives. I thought that maybe the ghosts or whatever they were connected to the house itself and would definitely end once we left. But that wasn't the case. The first thing that happened seemed so insignificant at the time, but in retrospect it feels like a warning. Max and I had settled into a new apartment in town. Not luxurious, but at least initially, we were both used to the quiet. A strange humming sound kept echoing in my head, a sound that felt familiar and reminded me of the house, but the feeling had almost disappeared. It started about a week after we moved in, and it happened every night. At first I thought it was just my mind adjusting to the change, but then it kept happening. I woke up in a cold sweat, feeling like someone was watching me. Max was fast asleep, of course, and I didn't want to disturb him, but it got worse. One morning, I woke up again at 3:15 a.m. I checked my phone, expecting to see the usual time, but instead I saw something unexpected, an email in my old email account with a simple subject: "You can't leave." I froze. I didn't even use that email anymore, and I hadn't logged in for months. I opened the email, and there was just one line: "I'm still there." I deleted the email quickly, threw my phone across the room, but the feeling of dread never went away. The whispering started again. At first it was very soft, like a distant murmur. Then it got louder and louder until I could almost hear the words: "You shouldn't have left." Max was annoyed by my restless nights, but he couldn't understand how he didn't feel the same way as me. I couldn't get the thought out of my head. A few days later, things escalated. Max and I were having dinner, just the two of us. We were laughing about something stupid, trying to make things normal, but then the lights started flickering. First one bulb, then the others. I tried to ignore it, but I could feel the temperature drop. The air became thick, like something was waiting for us in the room. I saw Max looking around. I knew he felt it too, but he didn't want to admit it. And then, oh my God, Max's phone rang. But when he looked at it, there was no number on the screen, just the word unknown. He answered the call, and the moment he spoke, the sound coming from the other end of the line sent a shiver down my spine. It was my own voice, but distorted. At first it was soft, like a whisper, but then it got louder and louder. There was no escape. Max hung up the phone, visibly shaking, and for the first time I saw doubt in his eyes. He turned to me, and I could tell he was as terrified as I was. Over the next few days, I couldn't sleep or concentrate, and we decided to take some extreme measures. Max found a paranormal investigator online who was known for dealing with serious hauntings. This person was confident that they could exorcise whatever was still attached to us in the house. We were desperate. I don't know why I thought this would work, but we invited them. The investigator was a woman named Linda, and she arrived with equipment, a video camera, an EVP recorder, and an electromagnetic field meter. Contrary to what I expected, she was calm, almost meditative, as if she had dealt with worse than what we were experiencing. I could tell she wasn't afraid, and maybe that's why I trusted her. We sat in the living room while Linda fiddled with her equipment. At first, there was not much conversation, just questions about the history of the house and what we had experienced. When she started talking, I noticed that the temperature in the room had dropped again. At first, it was not noticeable, but the chill was palpable, as if the air had a life of its own, as if something was watching us from every corner. Linda suddenly stopped, her eyes wide open, and pulled a small recorder out of her pocket and held it up. "Listen," she whispered. "It's already here." We listened, and after the static came a voice clearer than ever before. It wasn't me, it wasn't Max, it was a voice I knew all too well. "She can't leave, she belongs to us." The room seemed to darken. Max's face went pale, and I could feel something in the room pressing against my chest. I started to breathe rapidly, but Linda remained calm. She switched off the recorder and looked at us, a mixture of pity and something darker on her face. "This is not just a haunting, it is something worse." Max and I exchanged glances. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Whatever is attached to you, it is not just the house. It is also attached to you." She said that it has been following you since you left and will not stop until it gets what it wants. Linda told us that the thing haunting us is not just a ghost. It is older and more dangerous, and has been waiting for us to show a weakness, and we have given it that weakness. She promised to help us, but I wasn't sure I wanted to hear what she had to say. She said we needed to perform an ancient ritual, a binding ritual, to sever the connection, but there would be consequences. There are no free lunches in the supernatural world. She didn't say what those consequences would be, but I could see in her eyes that she wasn't sure we could survive the attempt either. Now, as I write to you, the house is still with us, still in my mind, and I don't know how much longer we can run before it catches up. I'm scared, really scared, but at this moment, it seems that we are already so deeply involved that we cannot escape. Maybe what is haunting us is not just looking for a body. Maybe it is also looking for something else, something darker, and we may already be so deeply involved that we cannot escape.